Hi, and welcome back to another edition of Mental Essays. I am your host, Everybody I Love Dies, and in this edition, we will be talking about Plato predicting the Avengers. And I'm talking specifically in this one about Movieverse Avengers. So, brief rundown of what we're going to be doing. In Plato's Republic, which is one of his major texts that everybody reads basically if you're in any intro to philosophy course, Plato describes both the most just human and the most just city. The purpose behind the Republic is that he wants to define justice and explain why to be a just person and what that would look like. And in doing so, he splits the soul up into three different parts: the rational, the spirited, and the appetitive. These three different parts should be in the order I just listed for you to achieve the most harmonious soul and to be the best person you can be. In doing this, he also expands it out to the level of the city, which also should contain the three classes of people in the same order to be the most just city that there is. This is Plato's Callipolis, his ideal city. This is why the Republic is generally read as both an ethical text and as a political text. What I'm going to be doing here is mapping the different kinds of societies and people that result in these societies onto the personalities that we see in the Avengers movie, and showing that, in fact, the setup of the Avengers team is in concordance with the way that Plato thinks an ideal city should be set up. So let's get started. Number one, we have the Callipolis, the ideal city, and the best person, the most just person, with the rational part of their soul at the top, ruling over the other two classes, the spirited, which comes next, which is your sense of loyalty, duty, those sorts of things. And that acts as a mediator between the rational up at top and the appetitive side, which is the lowest, right? You still need it because you still need to eat and have all these drives, procreate, etc., but that needs to be kept in check by both the spirit and the rational. Who fits this description? Cap, Steve Rogers. He is your tactical mind who knows how the other parts of the city should work together most harmoniously and is put in charge of them. Next comes his sense of duty and loyalty, of course, because we have Cap. That's what he does. And finally, we see Cap repeatedly not giving in to his own selfish desires or appetites. With Peggy, with the war, with coming into the future, and everything that he does once he hits the Avengers movie is entirely selfless. And that is who Plato thinks should lead. There we go. There's our philosopher king as Cap. Number two, timocracy. A timocracy is basically a society which is run by the military, sort of. As Plato describes it, the ordering would be spirited, rational, appetitive. So your sense of loyalty and duty would be at the top, which is good, but when not ruled over by the rational, you tend to get into righteous indignation fights very often. Who fits this? Thor, right? So you have your overall noble, good-hearted folk who get into a lot of fights and don't think rationally half the time. This maps onto Thor very well. And of course needs to be ruled over by Cap, where reason reigns supreme. Next, and this is the one that doesn't map well, so suggestions in the comments would actually be appreciated in this case. Oligarchy, which as Plato, it's not what we think of as oligarchy, as Plato describes it, it's the appetitive, spirited, and reasoning in that order. So appetitive rules over everything and uses the spirited, the military side, to seek financial gain through war and conquest. I say this maps somewhat well onto Fury, and generally those kind of like conglomerate, shadowy organizations who are using the military force towards whatever gains they might want, right? We don't know what they are. They could be like for noble reasons or rational reasons even, but we don't know. And we see in the movie, of course, that it comes out of a sense of fear of that Fury's actions in developing weapons and everything using Tesseract technology is coming from fear of retribution from people like Thor, right? We're not alone, that whole speech. Make Thor feel more guilty, why don't you, Fury? And so Fury maps onto oligarchy. My students this summer actually suggest that Justin Hammer fits this, which he does fit it really well, but I wanted to map it onto Avengers, so. Next we have democracy, appetitive ruling over rationality, and then loyalty and spirited side coming last, Tony Stark. And of course, Plato describes the main problem with this type of city is that it has no honor, it just wants what it wants, and it has too much freedom and is almost anarchist in its tendencies. So we see this especially in Tony Stark. This is kind of your capitalism, America society and personality. And of course, that's Tony Stark. His appetites rule over all, and he uses his rationality to get what his appetites want. And when it comes to loyalty and spirit and all of that stuff, that's kind of bottom at Tony Stark's interests. Finally, we have the worst society of all, tyranny, where spirited, appetitive, and reason rule in that order. It is lawless and consumed by power and lust. And this is our Loki. This is our villain in the movie, right? We have the spirited side ruling over all, so it's this sense of righteous anger, Loki, right? Feeling like he was wronged, feeling like he should be the one that rules, but with rationality so far down and the appetitive so close to the top, you end up giving in to these base, unjust desires to rule. In contrast to Thor's personality, the democracy, where the spirited also rules, but is tempered by rationality. So it's all the good, noble kind of indignation and battles that are fought, rather than the petty ones that we see Loki fighting. Petty, in our view. And if you notice, Loki and Thor are very close to each other, according to Plato, personality-wise. All that's happened is the appetitive and the rational have flipped positions, but both of them have spirited, as so nobility and duty-bound and all those sorts of traits at the very top. And the only thing that's different is basically how they give into it, right? Who rules next in their personality types. For Thor, he lets reason rule to a certain degree so that he does the right thing with his indignation, whereas Loki lets his appetites rule. So that is how Plato's Republic and the different ways of governing a society map onto the personalities in the Avengers. If you have any, this is a very odd mental essay, I recognize, but hey, I thought of it while I was teaching the Republic this summer. So, any comments? Leave it in the comment section, and I probably won't look at them. This has been mental essay number 4. I'm Everybody I Love Dies. Thanks for watching.